North Hill Chartered Accountants provide first-class accounting, tax, and advisory services to owner-managed businesses and individuals. If you're looking for a true finance partner, then why not book a free discovery call with us? Contact us today via our website at northhillfinance.com or call us on 033 3303 0988.
Welcome to North Hill Bite Sized, a series of short podcasts where we talk to small and medium-sized businesses from across the community. My name is Mark Hanrahan and I'm joined today by James Bennett, the co-founder and co-managing director of Reliance Health and Reliance Design and Build. You spent just under 12 years at a specialist medical equipment manufacturer before going out on your own. Can you just tell me, James, how did that help prepare you?
The first 2 years was just about understanding and getting me up to a standard where I could understand some of the more technical aspects of electronics, relay logic, alarms, things like this, as well as the electrical side as well. Also more mechanical engineering as well, so I can understand about some of the installation stuff, side of things for medical pendants, for operating lights, and just getting me ready really for the difference as well between working on a building site in a domestic scenario and working in a high dependency unit or a operating theatre or a MRI suite, for instance. And obviously the way that you would hold yourself, the way that you would behave, the way that you would obviously be very conscious of people in a hospital.
It obviously set the foundation for you setting up a business with the niche focus.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the skills the specific skill set that I guess enabled you to do that? And I guess what are the challenges that you've found from trying to create that niche presence? Because obviously it brings rewards, but it's, the work isn't as free flowing, I wouldn't have thought. Or how have you found that?
So Reliance, our company, we didn't set Reliance up to go into the medical sector originally. Obviously, where I've been in the medical industry for 12 years, I still had a lot of people that I spoke to. People would call me, and I found myself coming back to conversations with people that were head of estates, hospitals, surgeons, data managers, who would call me and say, "Joe, we've got this problem. Can you help us out?" And now, of course, I can help them out. And sometimes you build up relationships with people for a long period and they trust your work. Maybe somebody else had gone in there after I'd finished at Starkstrom, or maybe Starkstrom wasn't working there anymore, or whatever had happened, and they said, "Jay, can you can fix this. Can you come and fix this for us? Jay, we've got this project we're thinking of doing, and but the electrical contractor that we had previously on the last project we wasn't happy with." And at that point, something with me and Patrick sat down and said, "Well, I know this industry. I know exactly what they need to be able to be ready for commissioning engineers for your likes of Starkstrom, Brandon Medical, Bender UK, the three main players in the UK in the manufacturing part. I know the regs that they need to be installed to and the guidelines. I know exactly how they need to be interfaced before commissioning engineers turn up. The problem that a lot of electrical contractors get themselves into is they take on these projects of installing medical equipment, and then they get there, they don't understand the drawing, they're just not used to seeing it. And if you haven't seen it before, then sometimes it's difficult. Obviously, if you do it 1, 2, 3, 4 times, you can get yourself on board with it. But it's when things are new, and especially when you're dealing with equipment that's worth an awful lot of money, people get nervous. They'd rather not do something in case they do it wrong than do it and get it wrong. And because obviously then it costs money, wasted visits, wasted time. Then at that point you start pushing projects back. The NHS obviously can put penalty fees in if you're late. If you're working for a PFI on a PFI building, it's very common for them to put penalty clauses in because they will have penalty clauses with the trust themselves to be able to supply rooms as part of their contract.
Yeah.
So at that point, we found that we could get into that niche, and instead of competing against my old employer or any of the main manufacturers there, in fact, what we could do is we could work alongside them.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was the best. I thought that was a good way for us to get in. So we started with a project in a hospital in Southwest London, where we installed 8 IPSs and 2 I think they were 80 kVA UPSs.
Mm-hmm.
And we installed medical pendants into 6 theatres that were being fed by this system. And that was really our first way in. At that point, the hospitals that rang me to ask if I could fix things, of course I would. I mean, working alongside the other medical manufacturers, obviously they provide maintenance. So we've always been very conscious not to push ourselves with maintenance, because we don't want to step on any of the manufacturer's toes in that scenario.
Yeah.
Because we like doing the installation projects, really. But if a hospital calls me and says, James, can you come and fix something? I'm going to go and help them directly, of course.
Have you found, because of the pandemic, that you've had, because obviously there was a lot of partitioning going in, extra partitioning going into the hospitals. Yeah. Have you found, was there an increasing demand for your service, and did the type of requests coming through, have they changed as well?
They used the operating theatres as makeshift HDUs or makeshift intensive care units, just because they needed the capacity and they were that busy. So we found that some projects came to a standstill, but at the same time we had quite a few emergency projects that came up where we were asked if we could install IPSs and UPSs within a week. Can you start in 3 days' time? Can you start in a week's time? As soon as they could get the equipment from the manufacturers, can you install it? Because they were trying to make more HDU, ITU level beds. So they needed things like IPS, UPS. They needed to get other contractors like medical gas people on site as well to be able to provide the gas supplies to the beds. But then they also needed, obviously, the clinical power supplies there as well.
You mentioned a bit about the staffing and obviously getting good people to do what you want them to do.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, I guess the regular topic that comes up across the construction sector is that lack of access to trained staff, quality staff. Yeah. How have you found that side of things, and what have you found works for you in terms of actually, getting the right people and then retaining them?
Very good standard electricians to work with me. Because my background was an electrician, I know that the guys that I've got, well, my supervisor especially that works with us, I know that I can train them if we need to do any training with regards to medical equipment. So obviously, because of my position at my last company, mm-hmm. I know all of the equipment inside out. So at that point, and I trained quite a few of the guys there, I can now give the same sort of training to the guys that work with me. So I'm happy that they'll be able to move forward, and I don't need to go out there necessarily and get engineers in.
So it's an investment. It's your investment. By the sounds of it, then it's your willingness to invest in the right people that generates dividends. Is that right?
100%. You have to invest. Well, for me,
yeah.
As a person, well, both me and Patrick, I like to invest in people.
Yes.
So if for instance, I mean that will go between the Reliance Build and Reliance Health side of the companies. Like we're very big on trying to help people be the best they can be, mm-hmm. because at that point that makes our company stronger. If everybody is the best they can be, then that means Reliance will be the best it can be.
It sounds like really the strength or the ability to go into a niche was a combination of your industry specific experience, then obviously strong relationships within that industry. If you were to give advice to somebody else, going into trying to generate a niche focus for their business, what kind of advice would you be? around that? Are there things that are there key differences compared to acting as, say, a general contractor compared to what you're doing now? I mean, what are the challenges, and what kind of, words of wisdom, if you're able to impart anything in that direction?
I think the relationships are the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously quality has to go without saying. I mean, that has to be as a standard. Your levels of quality have to be at the very highest.
And that comes from the experience.
As just a given. As just a given, you can't turn up with a second-rate product as such, whether your product is an installation or an actual product. You have to have the highest level as a standard. And you should never not. I think self-critique as well has to be something you do on a day-to-day basis, constantly critiquing yourself, because without critiquing yourself, you will never get better. And you have to not take that personally. If there's criticism to come, take it, learn from it, own it, move forward. I think that is very, very important. With the niche, obviously with Reliance Health, we are lucky, especially during this pandemic, that we've had two divisions of our company. So we've had the building company and we've had the medical installation company. I think that we've needed both of them to be able to keep everything going. I mean, we're very lucky that we've come through the other side, and we're in a strong position now to be able to go forward for next year, and we're quite excited about that. But for us, one income wasn't going to be quite enough. We had to have two income streams, and so I would say don't close yourself off to income streams because cash flow is important.
Yes.
Cash flow is important, and especially if you've got big projects, if they overrun, then that's where you can get yourself unstuck. So we found, obviously, having the two sides of the company has really helped with things like that. But invest in the right people, which is a lot easier said than done. A lot harder than just said. Finding the right people is going to be the toughest challenge. And what else would I say? That marketing. I think marketing actually is something that is very important, and we found that out last year. We were quite strong, and then we didn't start our marketing campaign until too late last year, and because of that, we had a down period without a new project starting, where we should be constantly having a new project starting. We'd like to have 2 or 3 projects on the go, and we found that we hadn't done our marketing properly, and so we had a little lull. Now, obviously, we've learned from that massively. But so I would say relationships with people, the right people, as in the right staff, which again is the most difficult part, and marketing. I think would be the 3 most important things that we found.
That is, I think that's quite a common theme among some of the small and medium-sized contractors, where a big piece of work comes in, or indeed any sort of contract-based SME business, where there'll be a large piece of work that comes in, and obviously all the resources get allocated to that. And I guess it's that. I mean, it's not just. I mean, I think a large part of it is having the sort of the courage and the discipline to put, at all times, put some time aside to making sure you've got that natural churn of inquiries coming through, so you don't get those lull periods. But it's a lot easier said than done, I think.
Taking your eye off the ball of the marketing, I think, is something that we learned last year.
Yes.
We won't be doing it again.
No.
It's too important. And because you're busy, you're 100% right what you're saying. We were busy, and because we're busy, we just took our eye off the ball for, I'd say, 4 to 6 weeks, and that was no good, really. So we have a strategy now that we stick to.
Final question. Are there any sort of trends in the industry, sort of that, I guess, the small, medium-sized construction business side of things, is there any sort of trends that you're spotting and seeing come through? Do you think there's kind of more specialist contractors popping up, or it doesn't have to be that? That's just an example. Is there anything that you've seen that you thought, oh, that's interesting? I'm seeing that a little bit more now.
So where we're based, obviously you'll get different trends in different parts of the country. You get different trends in different boroughs in London. So where we're in Southwest London, obviously there's a lot of bespoke. People like bespoke is very popular. So if it's a kitchen or a bathroom or flooring or certain types of woodwork that like for carpentry. So highly skilled people are important where we are. That is the trend where we are. And so obviously that's where getting a strong team to be able to be competitive in this area is being very important. Other things that are happening at the moment, I mean, obviously, I think most construction companies will say that at the moment the price of materials has been a major factor for people being able to hold their price. The prices have gone through the roof.
Are you buying stuff in? Are you forward buying more materials as a result of that, or how are you managing that dynamic?
So we are about to start buying things in bulk. So we had an issue to begin with supply. So there was issues with so for instance, one of the medical projects we were on, I got a phone call from my wholesaler. Said to me, James, obviously had priced in all the copper, so we're running in fairly large cables, like, I don't know, 100 and plus mil 5-core cables. And he said, James, we've got an issue with copper. It's gone up 25% in the past couple of weeks. And then he said the next issue is that we're struggling to get it into the country and to actually turn up with it. That was earlier in the year. So copper was an issue. Plasterboard now, timber prices have all gone up dramatically. So obviously, if we priced projects, say 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and you get to the stage of the client will say, okay, we're ready to go. You get into a point now where we have to revise the prices. You can say we can hold the price for 30 days. Sign up as quickly as you can, because if you sign up earlier, then obviously I'll hold my price. But if you don't sign up and I come 3 months down the line and we're talking about it, we're probably going to have to revise some of the material costs, because I'm looking at a bill of 15, 20% more myself, which obviously when margins can be tight, you can't use that.
How are you finding clients are responding to that kind of conversation where, I think it's quite common knowledge now that prices are going up, particularly in your industry. But how do they take those conversations, and I guess how do you manage it as a business owner to manage that relationship?
Well, it's not easy for people. The first things first is that I try to look at the client's point of view, so I can understand how they're going to react. They've probably been, so if we're looking at the building side, they've been saving up their money to be able to do a project to make their house exactly perfect, exactly how they want it to be. They've probably saved up just the right amount of money. They've then agreed a price with a builder, and then due to nobody's fault really, the price goes up. So they're going to be, I understand that people might struggle. So we try to be flexible with them, as in how they might be able to turn up with the money. So maybe we don't want it straight away up front. Maybe we can absorb some of that cost to begin with, and then towards the end of the project, they can turn up with the extra money then, which isn't an issue. So we try to help them as much as we can, but at the end of the day, sometimes it's difficult. That is a fact. With the commercial side, it's not so bad, but I have found on the commercial side that some contractors have just absorbed the costs, and so they're running on smaller margins, which is difficult. I would struggle to run on the smaller margins, just because if there are any issues on the project where you have to, something goes wrong and you have to put more money into the project, which does happen sometimes. If you haven't got any margin, you've got no contingency in there, have you? So
sounds like planning. I mean, planning is really important, isn't it? Both from a cash flow perspective and a profitability. Actually, really looking at a project, and obviously the price quote, the costs involved, but actually trying to take account of if the cost base goes up by this much, what kind of risk does that present to the business?
Yes, it's very important. So as you said earlier, cash flow is a massive thing.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes a couple of projects to overrun. So if you've got 2-3 projects to overrun, whether it's your fault or somebody else's fault, it doesn't really matter. If it overruns and then all of a sudden you don't have the payments coming in as and when they should be coming in, all of a sudden your account can empty very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, you can go from a very strong position and 2 months later be all of a sudden, this is overrun, we've been delayed on this one, and all of a sudden your cash flow is in a bad place.
Thank you, James, and thank you for listening.